You're what?
Alright,
What did you say you were
we're
doing?
live.
Oh, we're live.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello everyone and welcome to Altacast number 3. Today I am joined here with Joel once again. And yeah, we're going to talk about what everyone on the team is doing at the moment. We're going to talk a bit about some future things. And then we're going to be answering questions like we did last time.
Which I'm trying to.
Joel's
I'm trying to
pull up his
get
phone.
currently, but I'm getting there. Okay, let's get started anyway.
Yeah. Okay. So team-wise, pretty much just recently, Victor and I managed to ship out the crafting stuff. A bit of a rocky release. Had some bugs that we're fixing right now, and hopefully will be fixed by the time this comes out. But yeah, it's been good. It's been good to see people creating their stuff, creating new bags, having that extra bit of storage. And I'm hoping that people like the new lantern flashlight thing as well.
Yeah, it seems to be pretty popular.
It's yeah, it was a fun creation to make. Part of the reason we didn't have stuff like that before is because if there's no way to craft them, we didn't want to kind of bloat loot with all of these items.
Like spyglass is probably one of the exceptions.
Yeah.
If we had hundreds of items like the spyglass, then we would have just been in the situation where people, like, not everyone wants a spyglass and not everyone's going to want a lantern or a spotlight. So if we just have heaps of them, then people just don't want to do anything with them.
Yeah. So that's becoming more of an option thing. Also, we haven't done it yet, but cauldrons and pots, currently they're spawning as loot. We're probably going to remove those. And that should help, sort of clean up the loot a bit so that you're not always finding this stuff that's...
Yeah, and we might even remove lanterns, I'm not sure, or lower the spawn rate of lanterns, stuff like those.
Yeah.
But the point is, loot is going to be more resource-driven rather than complete objects. Yeah. That's the general goal.
Yeah, we want complete objects to be rare, if anything at all.
Yeah.
So now we're kind of moving on to the next part of this, which involves working on a bit more of the content for crafting things, but primarily starting up with like limiting stack sizes. So there's a fair amount of things coming with that. I think
probably before stack limits come in, I'd say communal storage is going to go out in some fashion.
Yeah, I mean, from the technical perspective, like the stack sizing thing is really easy, so it's mostly done.
Okay.
So it's just like we'll see whether or not we want to release that immediately, or if we want to give an outlet for your excess resources first.
We're still evaluating the best course of action.
Yeah, the best release plan for this stuff.
But with the new crafting out, we'll potentially be seeing ways that you can make maybe cheaper bags that are smaller, different types of bags to store different types of weapons. May have liquid backpacks.
Yeah, that's something we're gonna experiment with.
Backpacks.
There's that one image of the tank.
It looks like Ned Kelly. But so that's exciting. It's like a whole realm of content that has been unlocked to us.
Yes, it makes it so that some of the experimental stuff that we can work on can have an actual place in terms of how you get it, as opposed to it just being this one and done item.
Yeah.
So I was going to talk about something else. Oh yeah, there's another whole point to this with right now all of the crafting things are purely cosmetic, what materials you choose. Yeah. As we start to expand the function of this crafting system, we're going to start to look at how materials can define like meaningful stats in all of those for all of those items. So like the role of what kind of leather you're using for your bag, how that impacts your bag. We have to kind of decide, is how viable are things like durability and weight and carry amount and stuff like that before they're too abstract or.
And what does that actually mean for stuff like a backpack? Because you obviously don't want your backpack to just poof into existence and
to just break and drop all your stuff.
Well, yeah, definitely you don't want it to take all your stuff with it, but you don't really want to drop all your stuff and then be like, crap, what do I do? So we're still discussing ways. We've got some ideas for how to make it so that we can add stuff like durability to a backpack without ruining the experience whatsoever.
Yeah.
So,
so that's kind of the next direction we're going, but there's not that much time before it's the end of 2019.
Yeah.
So there's only, I think, 2-3 updates maybe.
Yeah.
We don't update, I think, during the break.
Yeah, we might not do updates. We'll probably still rotate the store. We'll try and get some.
Yeah.
We'll try and get some content lined up, and even if we can't, we'll probably just do a rotation with repeated content, because we'd rather, just make sure people are still getting fresh and new things.
Yeah.
Maybe not new for everyone because they've been here since the start of the store, but new for a lot of people.
Yeah. So. Aside from that, Joel's continuing work on the forest and starting to get some attention from us, from me at least.
Yeah, I saw some concept art today. It looked pretty
I was
sweet.
doing some concept art. Joel's requested that we have some so that we can start to see what kind of crazier landscaping features he needs to be ready for.
I'm not ready. I'm not ready.
It's exciting stuff, and that's kind of what we want to talk about later on, is a bit of the role of the forest in the grand scheme of the game and what adventure really means. So that's what the title of this episode is going to be. It's talking about adventure stuff. But how's the forest going?
The forest is going. This week I didn't get a lot done, but my goal has been just to make sure we can properly test things. At this point, I've always been fly camming on the server rather than actually joining as a separate client. So I've gotten that all working. Maybe we'll do some multiplayer tests. We can actually jump in and walk around the forest and start pointing. That's our favorite thing about VR since day one, about like world building, is the fact that in most games you kind of you can't point at things. You have to, in a 2D game, you have to kind of be like, let me shoot a gun in that direction.
You might have,
but in VR, you're like, look at this.
And it's not quite the same, because here you have a really good sense of space and distance, and be like,
it's like 100 meters.
How big do you think this area is? Like, let me count this in fake steps or whatever, and you can measure. It's about three metal handles worth.
Three. But we hopefully we'll be doing some tests, getting a better sense of the direction we want to go. A lot of the fundamental tech is in, and I've been doing tests to sort of prove that tech, and so far it's proven itself well. There's stuff today that we'll talk about, which will probably lead, like in this video that we'll talk about, which will probably shape a fair bit of the direction that we're going with development in the next, I don't know, couple weeks maybe. We'll see. In terms of what the rest of the team is doing, Serena's kind of working on cosmetics and starting to move back towards the things she was working on. I've seen some Christmassy cosmetics being developed. I'm not sure how much I'm allowed to say.
I think it's very early stage.
I'm not allowed to say anything. Okay.
We'll see which one. Like we've basically designed stuff for the coming Christmas stuff, for the coming Christmas break. Yeah. And that's about it.
Okay, who have we missed? Timo's been away.
Yeah, Timo's away for a bit, so he's not in the office, which has been an interesting time for handling
releasing updates, because Victor and I have no idea what we're doing.
Timo's left a really pretty thorough document, but there's still like
we follow this document
issues.
Step by step, and then no one can log into service, and we have no clue why. So we've hacked it. Timo's going to come back and be in for a lot of surprises as he tries to fix whatever we've successfully broken.
Yeah. So thankfully we only have one more update to do, at least for the cosmetics, coming out next week.
Yeah, but
or just now actually.
But we don't need Timo for cosmetic updates.
Yeah.
No.
The update
we actually
process.
have to
you have to actually update the game.
You have to patch the game for cosmetics.
So that wraps up what everyone on the team is doing right now.
Yeah.
So let's talk adventure.
Adventure time, is it?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
time for adventure.
Time for adventuring.
So this is like an interesting topic for the game because it's something we always want more of, like at least internally.
Yeah.
Is more of this, questing outside. A lot of it's been happening in the caves, which has been great because we've been able to put content there, and there's this nice traversal mechanic there with the darkness and the layers and the biomes. But we really want to push that to the overworld. So you probably like things like the area where the Guterres are and the Turabata kind of show the way we want to expand the overworld. But those are not procedural ways. Those are handmade by us.
Yeah.
And so we want to try and come up with some stuff that's a bit more scalable for every time you're playing the game.
There's always going to be a spectrum of completely handmade by us to completely procedurally generated. And the critique that a lot of procedurally generated games or areas end up having is that it just becomes more and more of the same. So it's much more about the story that unfolds as you explore that procedural content. So with the caves, some people might find it after playing for months and months and months, they've gotten quite, they know what to expect. There's no more surprises, and although they're still exploring, they're still trying to find the way down. They're not going to come across anything spectacularly new. Sometimes I'm still amazed by the formations that happen in the caves, but I know what to expect. And but the benefit is there's infinite of it. It keeps going forever. But on the other end of the spectrum, we have handmade content. So Boramy puts out the new Tarabata section, and I see it, and it's brand new for me, and it's, goodness me, this is cool. Let me explore. Let me look around, and
Yeah.
I don't know what to expect because it's all completely handmade. But on the flip side, I've now explored it. I know what to expect. Every time I go there, it's going to be the same thing. So, and then obviously there's a bit of a spectrum where we can have some things like the camps, which are semi-procedural, and they have some benefits of one and some benefits of the other. But
Yeah, but we're not really pushing the variant on
they
the
have the
camps too
downsides
much.
of both as
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
So I think with overworld stuff, a key part of it is almost kind of treating it like how turn-based RPGs are, where you have encounters that can happen almost anywhere.
Yeah.
And those will probably be the primary drive for your next task or what you're doing right now, where you come across this thing and you deal with it, you get something in return, and then maybe that leads you to another point, or it gives you a clue about something else you might have encountered.
Do you want to give an example?
So, you want to talk about the idea you mentioned earlier, like that one, or do you want to?
The one I mentioned on my stream
I don't know if you mentioned it on your stream, but the one you mentioned when we talked about
about the door.
Yeah, the door one.
Okay, yeah. So I mentioned this on my stream. Advertising, sure.
Twitch.tv/now.
The idea is, imagine, for instance, we can build into this world, and this could be semi-procedural, but we could have scripted quest sequences, I guess is one way of putting it. And where different elements of the quest are and how it unfolds could be semi-procedural. But imagine, for instance, you come across a big door. And this door has slots for gems in it, and above each slot is a rune, for instance. And you don't really recognize these runes, you don't really recognize anything. You try putting some gems in there, and maybe it consumes the gems, and a big red flash of bam bam appears. Maybe not quite like that.
Probably not that.
But the point is, clearly whatever gems you put in there were incorrect. And this door, the location of this door might not be preset. It could have procedurally been inserted into the world somewhere. But now you're exploring the world and you come across, here's a red gem in a totem with this symbol, and you go, okay, red gem goes with this rune. And you keep finding this, and eventually you work out, okay, it's this. So red, blue, green, red. And that's what unlocks this door. And that door could then tie into further elements of this quest line. But we could procedurally say, okay, we select quest lines we're going to insert into your world. or maybe we have ones that are always in the world, and then it chooses places to place it, or maybe we hand place them in the world.
Yeah.
And then, but lots of elements can be procedurally generated to make it more unique and not repetitive. One example for that one is the rune to gem color relationship could be. I realized I'm waving my hands, but it's off the camera. The rune to gem relationship could be different on every server, so you can't just go on the wiki and go, I've come across a door and it wants 7 gems, and here are the runes. What gems do I put in? Instead, those runes could be different, and the rune to gem relationship could be different. So you can't cheat this. You actually have to work it out for your worlds, so you can get into the door. And then that's just the first step of 20 in this arc of quests to get the ultimate backpack. I don't know what the quest is.
Like I think most rewards will probably be of like material form, so something that you use in like one of the professions,
like a special type of metal that does something cool with your weapon, but it's in such high demand. You're like, this is going to be given to the leader of our guild for their great sword, or maybe for their dagger, because it's so rare that a great sword, you can't even afford that in this material.
And so like as we do all these procedural things, obviously we can, like, we're not going to try and just randomly place things and be like, okay, the gem can be found like in this completely random location, and then you don't have to, we'll provide procedural tips and hints as well, so that you don't take this gem and like scour the entire world looking for where it goes.
Where does this gem?
You'll get a hint, like maybe something that looks like the Lion King mountain we have. And it's like, maybe I'll go check out somewhere near there, and then you find something. And like glyphs that help you point you around the world, stuff like that. Treasure maps. So that's a huge part of the that we want to incorporate is, so like we try to think of how we can create normal RPG experiences, but a lot of them are like, firstly, like quests that you have in MMOs are way too scripted for us. I think we don't ever want those.
Let's talk about different quests in different games. So MMOs generally have I think 7 different types of quests or something like that. I think there's an 8th one if it's a text-based game, but generally they're like, go fetch this, or accompany this person to this location, or kill 7.
Kill 10 boars.
Like, the different types of quests. You can actually Google this. Sorry if that just wrecked every MMO for you. But the fundamental assumption of MMOs quests in 90% of MMOs is that no player actually matters, because I can go into this game and I can go up to this character, this key character, who says, the city is getting attacked, go to the front line and kill 100 orcs so that we can survive. And then I go there and I kill 100 orcs, and he comes up to me and goes, thank you, have this, blah blah blah, and then go see this person. Now Boramy logs in 5 minutes later and the city is under attack, and go kill 100 orcs. You've saved us, Boramy, go talk to this person. And every player is funneled through every single quest, and obviously they can choose which quest they do, but completing a quest doesn't complete the quest, it just completes it for you. And everything is a per user basis, and they fundamentally require the world to be instanced or appear differently for different players. So you might see that character go running off because the quest is complete, but another player, they're still standing there ready to talk to. And we do not want that. We just don't want that.
So essentially for us, when you're doing this quest, you'll be the one who's done this quest. And part of the benefit of having the procedural nature is that someone else can come across another form of encounter that we've designed that's completely procedural, and that takes them on their own quest to do something and get something.
And some quests could repeat in the sense that it could appear somewhere else in different contexts, like a creature is wounded and you have to heal it, could be a mini quest, and that could reappear somewhere else in the world at a different time. But it's not like that same creature is going to miraculously instantly wound itself again as soon as you've completed the quest for someone else to come along and unwound it. Like, that just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, contextually, we'll try, like, we'll be sure to try our best to make sure that it makes sense, that it's a repeatable thing. Like a wounded animal, you can imagine somewhere else. But, like, you know, we're probably not gonna have an NPC that tells you, like, you're the chosen one. And
everyone is the chosen one.
And so's that guy behind you, and that guy behind you waiting down the line.
You're all the chosen ones.
Yeah.
On the flip side, there's RPGs, single-player RPGs, where often you'll do something and it influences the world and it actually unlocks more features of the world. And that's much more what we want in Township Tale. But the downside of that is if we create lots of these small quests like this, what ends up happening is one player can go in and just complete the game. If one player, we don't want it to be the case that one player jumps in the world, happens to have, you know, the next 48 hours of their life free, because
48, you think they can complete the game in 48 hours?
All I'm saying is 48 and they've got really good gear and they just smash through all this stuff, and then their friend logs in and goes, wait a second, like, all this content in this general area of the world or whatever has been completed and done. Because obviously if you were to jump in The Witcher with someone else and then you log out and they keep playing for the next 48 hours and you log back in, like, things are going to be drastically, like, you're not a high enough level. They've done everything up to their level and you're still level 1 and wondering how to walk.
Yes, I mean, like,
it's a challenge.
More or less our mindset on how adventuring should play out for us. Like, these kinds of encounters are probably the next bit of content you'll see before we add too much to the caves, I would say.
But it's obviously a lot of work per thing. So it's not like it's not like we write one bit of code and then we've got hundreds of different quests. Every quest we'll have to spend time planning, or every encounter, I think, is generally a better term. It could be like a series of encounters which form a quest-ish line, but it's not your traditional MMO quest. So, but each of these encounters needs to be scripted, might need custom art assets, potentially needs its own custom way of implementing it into the world. So that each of these can be quite a lot of work.
We're kind of starting on the higher level plane of creating the environments where those things can happen, which is pretty much what things like the forest is.
Yeah.
So if you, I think we mentioned this in one of the previous Altacasts, but the idea of the technology behind the forest is that we could, change out, like, strip all out of all the assets that we're spawning in, replace them with other ones, change parameters and stuff like that, and create a completely different zone in the game world. So we call it, like, the forest generator.
But theoretically, it could be a desert generator.
Yeah, it could be a desert or something that generates rocky plains, kind of like the Turabada area.
And it doesn't need to be, for those who have seen the forest, it's very path driven. Nothing really expects it to have to be that way. Like, it could be, if I set the paths to be like 1 kilometer wide, at the end of the day, all that's going to do is make sure that the whole place is traversable. It won't look like it won't look like pathways anymore. So we can really apply it to any sort of thing. But the main important aspect is that it's procedural, and we can add new content. We can create content and just add it to a list of supported content, and then have stuff like the forest generator come through and actually pick out things, rather than us needing to go into the world and work out where everything's going to go necessarily.
Yeah. And so a huge portion of the next step for overall stuff is to create a bit of traversal challenge, like, again, we mentioned before. And so that's kind of the main, like, drive, I guess, for us coming up with challenges. How do we slow you down, essentially? not slow down, not slow down in a bad way, but like slow down. How do we like put obstacles in your way that you have to encounter and deal with?
A lot of people will know if they start the game and rush through, they can probably get Valiant in an hour or two.
Yeah, I mean, provided you've got a tool to mine mithril with, you've got it.
I think Tarabatas have definitely slowed that down a little bit, but one of the things that makes a game is the fact that you can't just spawn stuff in straight away. Otherwise, it's just a sandbox. And obviously, some of our servers, Creative Tale, sandbox servers now, they're less of a game and more of a sandbox. But it's things that slow you down and prevent you from progressing. Challenges that you have to overcome and work out and solve. They're what makes things a game. Even if it's as simple as Call of Duty, you're running along and people are shooting at you and you're going to die, so you have to shoot them. That's a challenge, and that's what makes it a game, rather than you just walking to the end and going, you've completed the level. So finding these challenges, these puzzle-ish aspects, these different types of enemies and encounters that can throw you a little bit and get you to actually have to solve problems and challenges on your way, I think will drastically improve the game. Yeah.
And obviously, like, things that we learned from like the supporter climbing level is like how much of a extra challenge conceptually having to climb and to traverse the environment would be, because it really throws a completely different dynamic to how you're moving. You know, these limited pods. You almost feel like your personal stamina kicks in a lot harder in your ability to move and navigate. Like, if you've played that level, imagine having to fight enemies while you're hanging for your life. You've got all of your gear on you, all of the stuff that you've built up.
I'm an archer. You are. I'm like, pull out my bow, and then I'm like, oh crap.
Yeah, we should have someone else be able
one-handed bow action.
Someone else should be able to knock an arrow on your bow.
If you toss your bow up in the air and then you quickly pull back on the string, then
or you hook the bow on your foot.
On your foot.
So pretty much locomotion methods could really open up that spectrum, and I'm really excited to explore
when are we doing swimming for our underwater dungeons?
I want to do it as soon as possible.
2021 I think it's scheduled.
I think how about when we like W-wise, I think is the one thing that I'm waiting for to do that.
We've got some we want to revamp our audio in the game at some stage. I think that will come in 2020. I'm assuming audio is going to... I would hope that audio is going to come in 2020.
I mean, in case you don't know, W-Wise is an audio system that kind of lets you do fancier sound effects. Like right now we have set triggered sound effects for stuff. So the moment an event happens, we play a sound. The way W-Wise can work is, for example, you know, how far back you pull out your bowstring, you'll hear
the sound.
It changes the sound, and you can play something incrementally through that, like the creaking of your bow.
But it can also do some fancier stuff to add variation, like pitch bending and slightly stretching sounds, so that even if the mining sound, it's only the one sound, instead of hearing tick, 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 it's like
tick-tock.
Tick-tock. It's a bit of variation. It just makes it a bit more interesting because they've done some pitch bending.
And right now we kind of do that manually for some things.
Oh, do we?
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. But I think sound will tie into the world building a lot.
I want to hear water running.
Yeah, right now there's 3 sounds in the game. There's daytime, caves, and nighttime. And that's pretty much it.
And I feel like there's barely a difference between caves and nighttime as well.
I'm not sure if anyone's sick of the birds chirping as much as me. But
have you not hunted down those birds?
I've been looking for them from day one. Shoot those. Anyway, but there's even birds in the Tarabata area where there's no trees.
Yeah, they're
bad design.
They're rock birds. Fantasy concepts.
Cool. But yeah, so sound will tie in a lot, and I think that's going to, just make exploring. I think the goal is to make exploring really fulfilling. Whether you've been there before, it should still feel great. Especially if it's new, it should feel great. And then
it should feel like a really if you've played the game entirely, it should be something that when you have a new player come with you, that you want to show them how all this stuff works and how exploration works. Kind of like how, I know a lot of players enjoy being guides for new groups of players, and getting to show everyone the nuances of the game and just seeing their reaction with it is kind of like this reliving of this of your early experience.
I also look forward to when there's so many features, so many different quests or encounters and environments that you can be playing for a long time and not experience one of those things in a long time. And then when you finally experience it again, either you've forgotten about it and it's almost new to you, or it's that nostalgia of, oh goodness, I haven't come across one of these in a while, or I haven't heard that sound, like the sound of a particular bird in a while.
Yeah. Or if like if we have these encounters that you're probably familiar with, but then something twists on it a little bit, and you're also surprised that this happened because you didn't think that these two systems could collide.
I've come across this before, but never like this. Yeah.
And I mentioned the audio thing because the sounds you hear when you're submerged obviously is a big part of the experience of being underwater.
Yeah, Underwater 2021. Calling it now.
I'm going to push it for earlier than that.
Calling it now. For later than that. Earlier. No, 2021. I think underwater exploration is something we've talked about. Lots of games are notorious for having awful underwater. But I think more modern games, underwater is becoming a bigger thing than people expected. If you look at Minecraft, for instance, underwater bases were something like, it's one of the first things I built in Minecraft was an underwater base, and people were obsessed with building underwater bases made of glass, but Minecraft itself had nothing to facilitate or make underwater impressive.
I think they have temples now.
They do. They have water temples. They have fish that you can punch, and they've always had fishing, but it wasn't real fish. It was just water.
Yeah, it's just the water.
And we might have not real fish fishing, or we might have real fish, like actual fish swimming that will come and bite your fishing line. But underwater is still definitely something that the idea of coming into caves and needing to dive down into the water, I think is going to be like the number one fear-inspiring aspect of a Township Tale in the future. I hate the beach for the fact that I am terrified of the idea of sharks, and I'm scared of like caves scare me a little bit, not that much as long as they're well lit, but the idea of cave water is next level terrifying.
I told you about the time I went caving in Malaysia, but pretty much you have this giant boulder, and there's about this much space, and you have to crawl underneath it, and there's water about up to here.
Yeah, but if the water is shallow, I'm not. It's not shallow water. It's like the Piranha movies, or there's a later. There's a recent movie that came out where they're caving and they have to swim down and there's sharks coming up and but like I don't know why there's sharks in a cave, but the idea is like
freshwater sharks.
The idea is it's deep water in a cave and there's like dark creatures who are hungry because no one's been down here for a long time and they're looking forward to snacking on humans. Anyway. Sorry if anyone we just put off a Township Tale.
Yeah, I mean that's a part of it, is that a Township Tale kind of like we kind of want it to be this varied experience, like
it can be scary, it can be extremely happy and bright, but you're also not forced into anything.
You're not forced into some of the places where we try and push the extremes a little bit. Because we do really want it to be this experience that encompasses all of these different genres and aspects of the fantasy medieval shared universe.
I think there'll potentially something we didn't talk about with the idea of encounters or quest lines is kind of world scale quests, things that actually change the world as you know it in ways. It's something that we probably won't be doing.
It's something that really happens towards the end, once like the systems are all kind of there. Yeah,
but the idea that you could do something and now it's a permanent blood moon nighttime until this boss is defeated or something like that, and it really changes the mood of the game. And we could have different things so that you can actually potentially adjust and maybe permanently modify the world in ways that can really change the experience and make your server even more unique. So your server might now have been in this darkness for a long time because you've angered something.
I mean, imagine if you could do something that curses every player on that server
permanently.
So like they're all cursed and they can't go out in sunlight or something like that. And so when daytime comes, everybody goes inside or goes in the caves.
Potentially, I would hope, a quest that they can they can undergo at nighttime, and maybe they have to. I don't know. They have to go through this series of challenges, and maybe it's not a quick process. Maybe it's not something they're just like, oh, screw this, let's fix it today. Maybe it is. Maybe it actually does take them multiple weeks, maybe, to solve this challenge to undo the curse across the server, so that they can resume their usual, usual life. Ideally, like, obviously we don't want things that actually stop you from playing the game. Like, we don't want a curse which is like, oh, Boramy, you now can't pick up items for the next 2 weeks or something. But
we want something that
it should change. It should augment your experience rather than remove your experience.
It should change your relationship a bit with the world. Is the main thing.
Yeah.
Like, I can imagine with this, like with the example I mentioned, like, someone new joins in the server, and maybe the curse only happened to people who had played on that server until then, and he comes in during the day everyone's using an umbrella for whatever reason, and you just see everybody walking around with umbrellas, like, what the hell's going on here? Why?
Sunny.
Like, it's such a strange little township we got here.
Yeah, they look normal. If they're in the sun, their skin sparkles though. So. Yeah, no, but there's lots of. So these are obviously we're talking
like super far into.
We're talking lots of features that are going to come in the future, and we did say this, I think, in a previous Altacast. Maybe not, but not every Altacast is going to be about features that we're actively working on. We're always going to talk about.
We're talking about the future and the vision for the game and stuff like that.
Yeah, we're always going to cover what the team's working on, but we're not necessarily working on features that are going to come out even in the next year necessarily. We want to start opening up topics about the overall vision, help people get an idea of where we're going. So adventure, it's going to be the most stretched out concept forever. Like, adventure is the name and game of a Township Tale, and so we're hopefully going to see bits of these come in. And what we'd absolutely love to hear in response to this is what sort of adventure excites you? What would you love to see? What are not specific ideas, like we're not really after particular story arcs, but what sort of challenges or encounters would actually interest you? People make jokes about other games hybrided into a Township Tale. I can't remember, there was an example earlier today. But for instance, something we've talked about is rhythm-based puzzles, or I just talked about a world-based exploration to match gems to runes. Like, what sort of puzzles or world exploration mechanics would interest you?
Like a giant monolith slab, and you have this contraption in front of you, and then you play Bejeweled on it.
Okay, so now it's just a mini game tale.
It's a mini game tale we've got.
But what sort of loot would you like to see? What would make exploration more interesting for you as a player? That's what we'd like to hear, and because obviously we have our vision, but we'd love to unite visions and tweak our vision in ways that can help, I guess, make the game better for everyone.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we...
I mean, I think that about covers it. We've got, like, we'll probably be able to talk about more in detail as time goes on. Like, adventures, I think, is going to be a topic we revisit.
Oh, we've been talking 40 minutes.
Yeah, 40 minutes.
We're going to do a quick FAQ, Q&A.
I'm going to cut the recording real quick just to save it, and then we'll be back in just a sec. Oh, shit. Okay, and we're back.
We are back. Okay,
right.
So will we ever see... Oh, yeah, we missed this question last time. Will we ever see the implementation of instruments? How would you take on the challenge of implementing instruments that require dexterity, like a flute or guitar, for example?
Yeah, I mean, there's two main bits of challenges there. First is the input. You know, there's going to be some kind of abstraction. But the main thing is the networking of notes. It's kind of like... I feel like I made this same example before. Like trying to sing over Skype with someone. Like you just both trying to match up with like the delayed version, and so it just doesn't work.
You delay each other.
Yeah.
I was brainstorming the other day ways we could do this, and I did think one way we could solve the timing issue, though it would make things slightly worse for everyone, is, except for the listeners, is if it actually, like, somehow you could start a band session and everyone heard a metronome.
Yeah.
And then everyone plays to the metronome but can't hear each other's instruments. But then anyone who's not in the band
just hears the whole thing.
Would hear the thing actually in sync.
Because
we
look for the notes between the metronome ticks.
Well, we would know when you're playing it relative to a metronome, and then we would just delay it by half a second and then play it sync back to everyone. But you wouldn't be able to hear. There's lots of challenges there. In terms of the dexterity of playing a thing, we could always dumb down instruments is an easy way to do it. So moving your hand up and down a guitar neck changes the pitch, and then strumming plays the note. Yeah. In which case I can go like Mary.
So you're always just playing like very basic chords.
But you're not really playing guitar. Yeah. Like you're not playing particular chords. You're just moving up and down and playing set. And the same could apply to literally any instrument that, like a flute, doesn't play like that either.
Like wind instruments are weird because blowing into a flute, doesn't work super well. Trying to keep track of you trying to blow into your mic, like it's never worked out that well. We could
look into interesting things like actually muting your microphone and listening to blowing into your headset, but as Boramy said,
you're not going to be as accurate as you want to be.
But then again, not everyone's good at flutes, so it might sound realistic when I hear someone going.
I mean, it's like having a flute that you've been using for like 5 years, and so there's a lot of gunk in there. So you don't get a steady blowout through it.
That's disgusting. Okay. So yes, we'd like to look into it, but no, we don't have the answers yet.
We'd probably have record players before we have instruments.
A paraglider?
Paragliders are a super cool idea. We like the idea of it. It's a...
anything new locomotion, like mixing up how you traverse the world. Like teleporters are literally the most boring form of like movement, and I'm sure most of you can agree. Stuff like platforms that you have to crank up or somehow have to power so they move, or zip lines, or paragliding, or boats.
The main thing about paragliding is it really changes the way you move around the world, and so we have to have kind of reasons for you to go paragliding and benefits and stuff.
I can tell you a reason. The forest is hard to navigate, but if I can go up on that hill and jump off,
that might be a good time to do it.
Anywhere.
We'll see. We will see.
Will there be use of gold for
damascening or inlaying of weapons and items?
I'm assuming that's like
damascening is like it's like the folding and the crushing of metal, so you get that pattern on it. And I think gold inlaying is for having like a.
I think we'll explore ways that you can use one metal to add a trim or add a variance. Maybe these words that I don't understand, but I think it would be cool. Is it something we've got planned or probably will implement soon? Probably not.
No.
We do value visual aesthetics, which is why we didn't just add one leather type, for instance, but we can't afford to spend a lot of time on new tech which is purely for visuals, because we want to focus on gameplay.
Yeah, and so we'll probably have real sinks for gold once we have more parameters to play around with metals.
New tool or weapon parts with special effects like the Phantom Guard.
So the Phantom Guard's a bit of an exception, and we kind of designed it that way because it does look like a guard, and because it is a guard, but it's kind of like almost a precursor, like a very early precursor to like enchantment, to like gemstone enchantments.
Because it's got a gem in there.
To like socketing. So in the future, when we do have this system, Phantoms will probably only drop a material that creates this gem, and they won't drop the guard part. But then you'll have guards or blades that can take in those gems.
So you could make any looking weapon a Phantom sort of weapon.
Yeah.
In which case, the answer to that is sort of no, but yes.
Was it a when question or?
No, are we going to?
Oh, are we going
to?
So
we'll imagine if like 20 different creatures were added to the game tomorrow, as well as the ability to put orbs or gems into sockets. We would probably change the Phantom to drop the orb, and all these other creatures could drop all these different gems and orbs and stuff, and then you would be choosing where in your weapons you insert these gems. Depth to cooking system or even a farming system. Yes, we'll definitely have more cooking, and we will have farming.
So that's part of the reason why we don't have a skill tree for them, for cooking and chiseling, is because we're waiting to go more in depth with that system as content grows. So stuff like baking and frying, like on a pan, stuff like that, are things we will have eventually once we can put the time to build that kind of content.
More blade types like katana, saber, scimitar, like curved blades.
The main thing with really thematic stuff like that is really based off of some kind of cultures, where we want to wait for that culture, for that equivalent in the game to exist, so that you have a different method of acquiring these more exotic weapons, as opposed to it being through the same channels that you get your other stuff.
Monobrow,
maybe. Yeah, we can make a monobrow.
Q&A sessions or interviews with people not in the dev team. It's something we might think about in the future, but at this stage we want to focus on sort of communicating our vision. I think it would be more of an exception and not something that we have planned or particularly will plan more. We're just going, hey, what do we want to do for the upcoming Altacast? Let's come up with something crazy. So we're not going to plan anything or say yes at this stage.
And we try and do these pretty spontaneously, so that it's less time dedicated to producing the stuff and more time to work on the game.
Weak spots for enemies?
I believe that system might be in place. I'll have to double check with Victor, but it's definitely something
But it's something we will do in the future.
I think the true battles might be weaker on their legs. If I remember correctly, they are, but I'll have to check with Victor.
Rope grappling hooks. I mean, ropes are really hard.
Like physical ropes are really hard unless you're talking about like straight line.
This is talking about like until climbing is worked on more. We probably just won't be touching stuff until climbing is worked on more. Like the reason we put climbing in the supporter branch because we knew people wanted to try it, Larry. And
it was also mostly there.
And it was mostly done. We right now are not in a position to work on features like that. So it's kind of back on the back burner, but it's just there for people to enjoy in the meantime.
The moment we feel like we can start working on these traversal things, we'll probably start with climbing because we've already kind of got it.
Okay, let's blast through some of these. The limit of horror surprise elements you would consider for a Township Tale.
No limits.
Creatures in underwater caves.
Eldritch horrors, everything. The whole.
We probably I don't think we'll go literally. We're not going to go like death woman mouth opening to consume her whole body and then walking back on all four. We're not going for the stupid horror, but we're not against that more. That more Cthulhu sort of fantasy.
Yeah, fantasy horror.
Yeah. Have you plans for philosophy? Have our thoughts of climbing changed since the community has played on the climbing side?
I don't think they've changed that much. We just wanted more.
It has reinforced our thoughts.
Yeah.
We knew that we've known since we released it, stuff like the pole grips weren't great. We've known that people want
climbing tools and stuff like that.
Climbing tools. We know that people want things that hook in. I think we have been surprised by how engaging it was to some extent. We knew it would be interesting, but I was amazed by how many people were trying to do stuff like speed running and stuff like that. I feel like if I thought about it more beforehand, I would have known that, but I was surprised people weren't as pissed off about glitchy grips as they were. Some of the pole grips are a bit glitchy, and we know that, and we will fix that sort of thing before it's released. But people are actually happy to put up with things like that for the challenge, and they will learn how to minimize it so they can do a better job still. So we've learnt stuff. I don't think we've particularly had huge...
Yeah, we haven't diverged really.
We haven't had to discard any big ideas.
I mean, it's good. It means that we're relatively aligned with everyone's experience.
Let's just clarify. It's not that we don't listen or value your input. It's just that your input has actually been aligned with our existing philosophies. Our thoughts of jumping?
Jumping is just... We need to spend the time to experiment on inputs and see how it behaves to make sure that it's nice and reliable, and then maybe we'll see.
Cooking skills?
Yep, some of the same answers before. We're waiting for that extra complexity, because right now cooking is, you leave the ingredient there and then you take it out. It doesn't have any real nuance or place for us to have skills and proper ownership of stuff.
I had a question, I forgot it. What feature, mechanic, or part of a Township Tale are we most proud of? I love our cosmetic system. It came together much more than much cleaner than I thought it would. The amount of flexibility our artists have to just put out different the fact that most games will generally say, hey, you have these 3 slots and let's swap out your pants, swap out your shirt, swap out your whatever. The fact that we can have multiple layers of shirt, jacket and suspenders, and I can wear a tie if we had a tie. I could wear a tie with suspenders because they don't actually overlap and take up the same part of the body. I think that's pretty cool.
I like the crafting system the best. I think both of them now. I really enjoyed the new workshop era. When I was testing with Victor, and we were just sitting there both kind of doing this mass manufacturing of the flashlights, so we can explore and give one to Timo and stuff like that was it's just kind of fun. And the weapon crafting, obviously, I think is a huge part that people like.
Personally, though, I would say the thing I would be most proud of is probably just the networking and stuff. It's legitimately it's all in-house developed. Our networking and world streaming, and it all has to play together and facilitate a world. And by no means is it perfect, and we obviously have lots of issues pop up all the time.
Yeah, but it's ours. It's our
but
issues.
It's ours, and it's actually it's I would say it's not something that. It was more experimental, a lot of can we actually do this? How feasible is it? Are we going to have to backtrack and just use someone else's system and try and hack it to do this? But if things didn't fall into place the way they had, I think Township Tale would be in a very different place. So, what are we most excited for? The flip side of it.
I'm just excited for pretty much all the stuff we talked about on the adventuring side. Particularly, like locomotion stuff is my number one, I think, though. Locomotion and enemies and environment hazards.
I already forgot the question. Okay.
What's the thing you're most excited about?
No, the next.
Right.
Sorry, yeah, that question. What am I most excited about? I don't know. I like we've talked about exploring today. I'm pretty hyped for. I love the idea of, like my personal. The way I like the idea of playing a Township Tale is being like a bit of a solo rider, but being part of a town. Like if Township Tale was single player, to me it would lose a lot of value. I love the idea of being able to go out and go on adventures and try and tackle, like there's a dungeon that no one's managed to complete and I want to be the one who completes that and can come back to town and sell whatever the loot is. And the way I make my living is by overcoming challenges that no one else has overcome. So stuff like adventuring, dungeons, puzzles, challenges, those sort of things that I can feel good about myself for solving or overcoming. That's pretty exciting for me.
Yeah.
2 more questions. Altacast, is this recorded in our spare time? It's 8 minutes since work has finished now,
so we try and do it pretty much sort of in the last hour of work. So it doesn't take us a huge amount of time. Sometimes it happens after work. The first one we did was after hours.
Yeah.
So it's just whenever we have nice and quiet to do it.
Yeah. It's good to do it later because it's quiet, but we don't. Obviously, we actually have a set time that we officially finish the day. And although not everyone's going to leave straight away necessarily, people do have stuff on in the afternoon occasionally. So it's best that we don't.
That we don't like.
We don't expect.
Yeah, we
that
don't
it's
depend
like,
on it being after hours. We try and do it before.
And the final one. Are there any way to change textures, models of items, and actually mixing into that settings of LODs and stuff like that? They're actually really
they're completely different questions.
My bad. Changing settings. Right now, there's no ways to change settings. I do think it's something we should be exploring soon. I would say early next year. We'll look into settings.
We kind of want to optimize the game as much as possible. And that means culling it back to what we think is like the lowest possible setting. Maybe we can go even lower. But yeah, I think we'll have to just balance things to make sure that things don't look really, really ugly when you pull it back.
Yeah.
Like so that the houses don't just have missing walls constantly. Yeah.
And modifying stuff. I think I've seen someone do it, but it's not something we officially support. In terms of mods in general, it's something that we'll look into in the future. And our general rule on it is pretty much don't do anything even remotely exploit. Sort of like don't exploit the game in any way. Don't try and you won't be able to, but as an example, don't try and spawn in items so that you can cheat on a server. Obviously, if you're a server owner, you can spawn stuff in. But like the point is, if you're going to try and mod or change your game in any way, just keep it client side only. Like visual changes, that's cool. Like I'd love to see if someone can manage to change the grass to be snow and like whatever. Like feel free to do that. But there's no official way, and as far as I'm aware, there's no documented way that any people have done.
But if you want, for whoever wrote that question, you can get the Ironclad in Blood and Sorcery.
Yes. What is much easier...
No, it's just a...
What's much easier is to get the assets out of a Township Tale and then put them in VR Chat, Blade and Sorcery, put them in Beat Saber, and post those all over the appropriate subreddits. Make sure you say, this is from a Township Tale, the best and my favourite VR game of all time.
You're starting a war with all these other VR games.
And... and then make sure you invite all your friends to play a Township Tale, become supporters, and then everyone's happy, really.
All right, that's it for us with the Altacast number 3.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for watching, everybody.
Thank you.
hopefully we answered your questions. Joel's going to have a new link that we'll post in the description below. Be sure to check that out if you've got some questions that you want answered.
The old one is obsolete.
Yep, so don't go to that one.
Maybe what we should do is set up a way that we can have
an updatable link or something?
An updatable link.
Yeah, so that the previous watchers can go
can
to the right
link
place.
to the next one.
Yep,
yeah,
that's a good idea.
We'll do that.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you.
I'm gonna cut the recording real quick just to save it, and then we'll be back in just a sec. Oh shit. I just wanna